Welcome back. You're watching Visions. I'm Donna Williams, and our guest today is Paul Valent, a child survivor of the Holocaust, a psychiatrist and the author of several books. Welcome back, Paul.
Hi, Donna.
We were talking about your role as a trauma therapist. So can you kind of give us the trauma therapist 101? What's the ingredients of trauma therapy?
Well, look, the way I see it is that first of all you need to recognise that trauma has occurred, because surprisingly often you just don't recognise. The next thing is to make sure that the trauma does not occur further, because if it's occurring you don't go into how do you feel, etc. You make sure that the person survives and is not threatened anymore. And then there are all sorts of supportive things that you must do, like if the person, for instance, is unable to look after themselves in some way or other, well, you make sure that you teach them that. The next thing is you treat symptoms. There might be specific symptoms and you try to manage them. But the essence of trauma therapy, I think, is that you've got to deal with the trauma, that you've got to, first of all, give the person hope that there is something other than trauma, that within themselves they actually, in a normal way, in a normal biological core way, they have alternatives to dealing with the trauma. And then you see how they did deal with the trauma. What is the context? What is the meaning? What are the moral issues? And you adjust them in such a way that they are more appropriate to the current non-traumatic situation and allow them to move out of the traumatic situation, which is still moving and reverberating in their minds, so that they can put that trauma into the past, because it's a past trauma, and are not living it currently. So it's got a chronology, it's got words, it's got a story, it's got grounded. A narrative. It's something of their story in the past which they can put into perspective and look to better alternatives. It's much more complex than this, but that's the guts of it, I would say.
Yeah, that sort of fits with the support group that you founded, Child Survivors of the Holocaust, because I assume that this is a group where people would be able to collectively work through those experiences and get some grounding with that.
Yes, it's not a therapy group, so we don't do all of that, but we certainly deal with it in different fragments in different ways. And to have a group actually where these people had been isolated till then and their experiences were very much inside and hidden, to be able to share them and to be able to realise that you're not the only crazy, because they thought they were crazy, but they were not, they were traumatised.
That's really interesting. That's very important. That
I think it is very important.
Until people put the words to it, they can easily be considered crazy.
And there are reasons why people have certain responses and still carry them forward. Yeah, it's very, very, very salutary. And people in our group have told their stories, and people have been able to relate to it as, oh, me too, me too, me too. Oh, really, you too? Oh, and it's very affirming and it's very grounding.
And because these were child survivors, they wouldn't at that time have easily been able to put all these words to things. So
not only that, they were told, you were only a child. What would you know? What did you experience? We, the adults, experienced something, but you as a child, what would you know? You don't even remember. So
but in a sense, not
even
being
the memories
able to,
were negated.
Not being able to put words to those memories or to articulate those memories is a very disempowering position to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Yeah. So memories is a very important part, both in therapy and especially with children.
Can we talk about your books? So you've got a couple of books here today. You brought in Child Survivors of the Holocaust, which is 10 accounts of child survivors of the Holocaust.
Yes, I chose them for different reasons, because they represent different childhood type experiences.
Yeah. This one we've got From Survival to Fulfillment.
That gives the framework for trauma and its ramifications throughout humanity.
Humanity, that's a good point.
The human, but also the social human.
We've got trauma and fulfillment therapy.
Well, that deals in more detail with more or less what you asked me before.
Okay. And you've got a couple of new books. What are their titles?
Well, one is being published next year, and it's titled In Two Minds. And it's more or less the sort of things that we were talking about, my experiences and how I struggle towards understanding what trauma is about. And it's full of clinical stories that deal with very, very human issues that are related to trauma and fulfillment.
So there's one new one coming out,
And
or
there's
two?
a book that's my magnum opus, maybe. The one that I hope will have, or potentially might have, the greatest effect, and that is it deals with violence. And I believe that I now have a framework whereby I can deal with, or I can conceptualise or help to conceptualise all types of violence, ranging from violence against the self, against another individual, domestic violence, all the way through to wars.
So this obviously would fit somewhere in with your vision for a more just and humane
Yes, because
future.
I do believe that violence is now in our civilization extent. It doesn't have a place. It belongs somewhere in the past, and if we understand it in a quasi-therapeutic way, we can deal with where it comes from, put it into a narrative, into the past, and get on into a future without violence.
That's a great vision.
Yes.
If we sort of interpersonally can gain that knowledge and use that understanding to make, to get rid of the futility of some of this craziness that really affects all of us, not just the direct victims of war and violence, but the fact that, so many of us are living in a society where that's presumed normal or accepted. So
it is futile, isn't it, Donna? Yes. I think the time has passed. I think that we now have the resources, we can manufacture the resources. It's really a matter of distribution. We don't have to fight each other for them. But we're in the atavistic, historical habit of doing it. We have to get out of it.
Okay, Paul, thank you so much for joining us on Visions. You've been watching Visions. See you next week.